the birthday ceremony, the chromatic diet, a piece that I will briefly discuss later, the bedroom of exquisite pain recreated for the exhibition in Beaubourg, particularly its red telephone, which I'll mention again later, or else another topic, the topos of the investigation, asking questions. The Bronx, the piece of 1980, Los Angeles, the blind, last seen and finished, just asking questions to people all the time. But the identities that stem from those strategies, Sophie Melancholy or Sophie the sociologist, do not easily cling to her, which is why she can rarely refrain from mocking them on a parodic mode, thus making them even less adherent. On the other hand, no castrating irony can be detected in Calle's dealing with voyeurism, exhibitionism, or absence, but you have certainly curiosity, cruelty, sympathy, desire in short, all the more moving, contra Barthes, that it is stated as flatly as possible. Next fragment is called Proxy. And yet there is in Calle's work a figure that is born out of disaffect and stages it perhaps as an antidote. I would call this theme strategy proxy. A constant, essential rule of a game, it intervenes right from the beginning, right from the sleepers. She asks people to sleep in a bed, to take a place, and when one of the sleepers misses an appointment, she replaces him or her. She takes her place, and I make the sleeper a woman there so as to stress the ambiguity of this possessive. Whose place? Takes what place? She takes the place of the sleeper which is in her place. Acting by proxy, she undermines the foundations of a person, of the unity that all her thematic recurrences are allegedly producing. She only gives shape to this mask in order to dispel it as an illusion. She writes I and me every 3 lines, basically, so that we fully grasp that this very self does not exist. It is Sophie Calle, whom I had met a few months before, unconsciously for about 10 years. I had avoided every occasion to do so. We had many, many missed encounters. It is Sophie Calle who had recommended to me Olivier Rollins' book, Le Tigre en Papier, Paper Tiger. I had just landed in Paris, and in a few days, much gossip I had heard spoke of that book as the favorite for the next Goncourt Prize. That was last year. I had never heard of Roland before, which is not very surprising. For a long time I lost track of the new French literature. But the Goncourt Prize, that surprised me. Not so much that this quaint flower of bourgeois taste had not yet been discarded, nor that the crass trick of publishers and booksellers still had some credibility in my beautiful country, which is not as anti-American as it takes itself to be, my beautiful country, because the Goncourt Prize is even worse than the Hollywood Oscars, whose list of absentees is the best hit parade ever. No, what surprised me and even annoyed me was that a writer whose work I had always admired for years, another identity to be added here, Sophie the writer, would encourage me to read a book destined to be so crowned. All those rumors, all those prognostications of the Goncourt Prize were clearly prohibitive. But Roland was spared this badge of dishonor. The crooks of the literary brotherhood did not anoint him. He suddenly became readable to me. So I read his book, yes, and with great pleasure. Roland's language is splendid. His harrowing elegy is always right on target. I shared the enthusiasm of my counselor in reading matters, but I could not convince myself that she had been attracted by the book for its disillusioned reminiscence of May '68, even though I was aware of a leftist past. I mean, it's a book, it's very good, but you know, it would be very surprising for Calle to be interested in the memory of something that of which she also had a memory that is much more relevant to what she wanted to do. I suddenly understood that it was a title, a catchphrase used by Maoist activists during the Vietnam War to designate American imperialism, that had been the initial object of her desire, to become a paper tiger, the character of a novel or of an autobiography, to ensure that these two things amount to the same. That is what Calle has been working at by proxy for many, many years. Next fragment is called Les Rendezvous d'Anna. Writers play a very important part in a real life as well as a fictional one. This distinction, of course, is no longer of much use for anyone aspiring to be a paper being. The first to have written her down, so to speak, is Hervé Guibert. In Exquisite Pain, the last piece, she recalled their initial encounter. I quote, I had never met him before. He came round to see me. He wanted to do a profile of me for Le Monde. Guibert was a journalist at Le Monde for many years. He made himself comfortable and began by asking my date of birth. I replied that I was born on October 9, 1953, period. Well, go on. So I decided to play the game. He wanted me to tell him all about my life, starting at the beginning. All right then, I spoke for 5 hours non-stop. He smiled and took notes. End of quote. It is perhaps in part because the experience of the interview had bored her to death that she doesn't include Guibert's interminable article in the dossier. Very strange for her to withdraw information that appeared in 2 half-page installments in Le Monde in August 9 and 16, 1984. She only quotes the first sentence in order to attest to Guibert's faithfulness to her word. Sophie Calle was born on October 9, 1953. And that's it. In truth, she had not really played Guibert's game, but the fastidious role of the interviewee, which she must have had to take on countless times since then. It's what happened after this first meeting that interested her. That's when the game really began and produced a character. She mentions 2 episodes. Guibert's loss of a cherished photograph that she had lent to him, and an ensuing rage to the point that she goes harassing the writer at home and he shuts the door on her. And then the bath taken by Guibert, upon whom a few months later she had stumbled by chance in Japan and who had unwillingly become a travel companion, the bath he take in her own bathwater. The first of these biographical elements, the photograph, was used by Guibert in a passage of To the Friend Who Did Not Save My Life, and if you know the friend is Michel Foucault, a passage that is reproduced in exquisite pain, as the log entry bearing the stamp 63 Days to Unhappiness, and corresponding to the day of their unexpected reunion in the hall of the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. So in this book, Exquisite Pain, which is also going to be a large installation in Bourbourg, the book you have a facsimile of the book by Guibert, which describes the life of a character called Anna, which is Sophie Calle. Calle had become, in this book, Anna the Pain in the Ass, the first novelistic incarnation. In another passage, reproduced in an entry of 60 Days to Unhappiness, Guibert had revealed how their mutual distrust has suddenly morphed into a close, durable friendship when they got themselves locked up in the temple of Asakura, while, in imitation of the local pilgrims, they were busy trying to formulate a wish. In several pages of Exquisite Pain, photographs illustrate Anna's Japanese adventures, portraits of Guibert, above all, and many other things, above all the photograph of the white scraps of paper hanging from trees described by Guibert and likely to charm a paper tiger. As for the story of the bath, Guibert doesn't say a word about it in his novel, elsewhere perhaps in his very abundant oeuvre, but Calle overdoes it in Exquisite Pain, tacitly reproaching the writer for having failed or refused to give this mini-drama in offering to Anna's character. For the entry of 50 Days to Unhappiness, in addition to a short narrative which ends at the point where Guibert, furious at having been seen naked when Anna opened the bathroom door, attempts to strangle her, he was not joking, says Calle. Calle published a photograph of the wooden bathtub, a very minimalist object, it looks like a jug. Then for the 7 Days to Unhappiness entry, she reproduced a letter from Guibert that she received that very day. I quote, "I do not feel like writing to you. I want to play dead, to keep you waiting, that you are driven mad for not having any news from me, and above all that the moment when I followed you naked in his warm water be already unforgettable." End of quote. Calle's mourning of Anna was long. It only ended when she had to mourn Anna's author. At the beginning of No Sex Last Night, Calle, who plays the role of Sophie, the fiancée here, finds herself in New York while Guibert's funeral is taking place. He died when she was in the plane to New York. In order to ritualize her sorrow, she decides to throw a bunch of flowers at sea at the very instant when Guibert's friends have planned to disperse his ashes off the coast of the islands of Elba. This is a heartbreaking moment of solitude in this film about solitude, a moment that becomes almost unbearable when, wanting to hear a friend's voice for the last time, Calle calls his number in Paris and gets his answering machine, which has not yet been disconnected.